Great, thanks. So how many people wear glasses or contacts? Ooh, quite a large number. And how many people feel like they've overpaid? Wonderful. That's why we started Warby Parker. We're looking at an industry that hasn't really innovated much and seems to be overcharging for a product that's basically been around for close to 800 years. So we thought, what if we could design our own brand, design the glasses that we love, and sell them direct to consumers online, and in the process sort of bring down the price. A little bit about me. As you may have heard, I used to run a nonprofit, and what we would do is train low-income women to start their own businesses selling glasses in their communities. And one of the things that you might not be aware is that there's about 1 billion people on Earth that don't have access to glasses, and it just seems crazy given that glasses were invented about 800 years ago. So you have this sort of dual challenges. One is that glasses aren't available to a very large chunk of humanity, and where they are available, they're unnecessarily expensive. One of the things that sort of I found when I was traveling the world distributing glasses in places like India and Bangladesh is that no matter how rich or poor you are, fashion matters, and you put glasses on your face, and it is an expression of your personality, and people would rather be blind than wear a donated pair of 1970s cat eyes because you'll get ridiculed by your friends and neighbors. And so what we started to do was design glasses according to the tastes and wants of those communities. So in places like India and Bangladesh, gold wire frames were really popular. In places like urban El Salvador or even sort of semi-rural Guatemala, the styles were more similar to what you'd find here in New York and LA. And we even would build a brand around Vision Spring, the nonprofit, so that people had trust in these glasses. After about 5 years of doing that, I went back to business school and met 3 amazing guys, Jeff, Andy, and Dave. And we were in the computer lab, and we were complaining about how glasses were so expensive. And I sort of said, well, I've been to the factories, and they really don't cost that much to make. And when you look at the industry, you see that power is sort of concentrated in a few very large companies that are keeping prices artificially high. So there's one company in particular that owns or controls manufacturing facilities in Europe and Asia, has licenses to all the big brands like Ralph Lauren, G&G, Chanel, DKNY. They also outright own Oakley, Ray-Ban, Oliver Peoples, Arnett, Persol. They also own all of the retail chains of scale, including Lens Crafters, Pearl Vision, Sunglass Hut, Sears Optical, Target Optical. And then the icing on the cake is they own the second largest vision insurance plan in the country. So, is
that a monopoly?
I would think so. So we looked at that and we thought, oh shit, are these guys going to come and crush us, or do they have such massive channel conflict that we can come in, sort of David versus Goliath, and perhaps disrupt this industry? Because what we're doing is selling glasses with prescription lenses at $95. We're basically giving the whole retail margin and the licensing fees back to the consumers. So this company is called Luxottica. They're typically paying between 10 and 15% royalty fees to these brands. And when we looked at optical retailers, they were operating on 3 to 5x margins, which we thought was quite high, given apparel and accessories, right, are typically operating at 2 to 2.5x margins. So we thought that as we would sort of tell the world about this, number one, it would click because there were definitely lots of people like us who had walked into an optical shop, gotten really excited about a pair of glasses, but then walked out feeling like they got punched in the stomach. So we thought we could build this brand around doing good, that we could transfer billions of dollars from these large multinational corporations to normal people. And we set out to sort of build a brand around that. And what that meant for us was sort of being stakeholder-centric. and thinking about all the stakeholders in the decisions that we make. So for our customers, it was about providing exceptional value and great customer service. One of the things that we take the most pride in is that when we measure our customer service through Net Promoter Score, our customer satisfaction is around 88, which is higher than any score we've ever seen, higher than Apple, higher than Zappos. We then sort of think a lot about our employees. How do we create an environment for them to thrive in? Because ultimately, they're the ones that are going to determine how this brand looks and feels, and our customers experience that brand. So the first thing we did when we moved into our office was knock down all the walls, because we recognize that the majority of people are coming to work with us because they want to learn. So there's no better way to learn than having visibility into everything that's going on, and investing in leadership development programs, whether it's executive coaching or 360 reviews on quarterly basis, monthly informal feedback sessions. So trying to build all this into the culture of the company. On the environment, we try and find ways to minimize our impact. So we're one of the only carbon neutral eyewear brands out there, and all of our black acetate is actually made from recycled acetate. Thinking about the community at large. So for every pair that we sell, we distribute one to someone in need, and we try and do that in a thoughtful way by partnering with Vision Spring, the organization that I used to run, that is actually using glasses to create jobs, and they're being sold at a very affordable price, usually a couple dollars, so that way people living on less than $4 a day can afford it, but it's avoiding sort of that culture of dependence that sometimes comes when you give away stuff for free. And it's actually working to foster sort of the local economy. So as the four of us were in business school, we were sort of trying to think about all these things that would make sort of a coherent narrative, because the question would be like, first of all, how can you sell a $500 product at $95? And we sort of would explain that by explaining the industry dynamics. The second would be sort of like, why would you do that? Why not just lower it to 400? And it's because we're trying to demonstrate that companies can do good in the world and can solve problems. We ended up sort of working on sort of the brand architecture, and coming up with a name actually took us about 6 months and went through 2,000 different options. It was quite a battle between the four of us, but we kept coming back to sort of our literary heroes and thinking about the tie between eyewear and literature, and looked towards Jack Kerouac, sort of one of our literary heroes. And it was just serendipitous that my co-founder Dave walked into a New York Public Library exhibit, and there happened to be an expose on Jack Kerouac, and two of his early characters were Warby Pepper and Zag Parker, and it's sort of like perfect. We went out, and being the business school students that we are, we sort of tested it with about 1,000 different people, and found that we had either neutral or positive reactions, almost no negative reactions, and that there was almost no known associations. I mean, there were a few finance guys, I would say Warburg Pincus, but we figured that the general public wouldn't really think about that. So we felt we had this name, we had the brand, we designed our first collection, and worked to produce that, worked on the website, and basically we mapped out every single page on PowerPoint, print it out, go to our friends, and do sort of user testing, but on paper, in order to sort of build the company on a shoestring. And then the third thing that we invested in was PR, knowing that you only have sort of one shot to launch a fashion brand, because ultimately that's what we were doing. Even though we were trying to become sort of the biggest online retailer, what we really realized was that for us to have a competitive advantage and sort of maintain that, it was really all about building a brand that people could build relationships with. We ended up launching February of 2010 to features in Vogue and GQ, and the company just shot off like a rocket ship. We hit our first year sales targets in 3 weeks, sold out of our top 15 styles in 4 weeks, and accumulated this wait list of about 20,000 people. And since then, we've continued to have basically double-digit month-on-month growth, and now have about 70 people down in Soho. So it's been an amazing journey. and looking forward to sort of delving more into the details.
Okay.
Thanks.
So we're going to do a question session. So I'm going to ask Neil a few questions, if this microphone works. Does it? Hello? So I'm going to ask Neil a few questions we went through before, and then we'll open it up to the floor, and you guys can throw your questions forward as well. One thing I think is really interesting is this challenge between being in the sort of tech digital space and being a fashion brand, and how you kind of balance those two worlds, and how you can kind of succeed being a fashion brand, which is, let's face it, a pretty fickle business.
Yeah. So we hate the phrase fashion tech. We really think of ourselves as a fashion brand first, and that really came down to when we would look and see why and how people buy glasses. It's first and foremost how it looks on your face, second price, third quality and service, and fourth maybe social mission, if that factors at all in your decision-making process. So based on that, that's how we sort of rank order our messages to the public, and we do think of ourselves as a fashion brand. That's why we were intent in launching in Vogue and GQ versus a tech crunch, and why we sort of invest so much in just trying to make the website beautiful, focused on imagery.
So when you say 70 people in Soho, and the first kind of hires, who are you bringing in? Who are you most desperate to have on staff? What kind of people?
So at that point, it was really customer service. So about half our team is actually customer service, and people think that we're crazy for running a call center in the middle of Manhattan using pretty educated bunch. A bunch of them are Ivy League school graduates, but we found that we're sort of working a lot on the fly, and with talented individuals, you can give them broad directions, and they have autonomy and responsibility to make people happy. And we look at customer service and experience as marketing versus just some cost center that should be outsourced and reduced. And we're finding over 50% of our traffic and sales is being driven by word of mouth, and we think that customer service is core to that.
So when you expand customer service out into the digital channel, for example, places like Twitter, Facebook, being able to respond to consumer needs, is that a very big part of what you do and something you really believe in?
Absolutely. You see all these studies that show, right, online people can be very negative and tend to be a lot more negative because there is some anonymity, even though you might be tied to your Facebook profile or your Twitter account. So we try and control the conversation as much as possible. We're pretty lucky in that the conversations tend to be pretty positive, but we respond to every single tweet, every Facebook post. One of the things that we've started to do is actually surprise people, and we'll shoot short video responses to people's tweets and then tweet it at them. And we found that actually, in the weeks that we did that, our sort of Twitter follower, the rate by which our Twitter followers increased by 75%. So we're trying to get really creative in how we engage with people. One of the things that when we were building the company, we often asked ourselves, would we buy glasses online? We had seen, Zappos sell shoes, Blue Nile sell engagement rings, but at the end of the day, we weren't convinced unless you could actually try on the glasses. So we came up with two solutions. One was this virtual try-on where you can upload a photo of yourself and virtually try on glasses. The other is this home try-on where you can select 5 frames. We ship it to you free of cost, and you have 5 days to try it on at home. And what we would encourage people to do is actually take photos of themselves wearing those 5 glasses, post it to Facebook, and then we could comment on it, saying, hey, number 3 and 4 look great. Number 1, maybe not. But what was great was the entire community started to provide input to people, and buying glasses is such an intimate purchase. It's on your face. It's the first thing that everybody sees, that people really wanted that confidence from the feedback they were getting from others.
You talked about the power of digital, but you've also done a lot of stuff in the real world, the pop-up stores, all kinds of other things. Talk about the importance to balance getting out in the real world with the digital.
Yeah, I think we try to interact with our customers where they're living, and they're living obviously in the physical world, but digitally as well. So whether it was our home try-on program, we think the future of retail is a marriage between e-commerce and bricks and mortar. So we launched a holiday store down on Grand Street, ran for about 5 weeks. We had about 20,000 people through the door, and really tried to create a fun experience. So it was for the holidays. We had yurts set up, which are round Mongolian tents, because in New York you need to have one of those. It was in a 3,500 square foot garage, so a very large place to display little glasses. So we partnered with other folks to just create fun experiences like best made axes, and we would have tutorials on how to fell a Christmas tree. Also, because every New Yorker needs, a best in class axe. They actually sold out in their first day of being there for a week, which is pretty interesting. We also, when we've done these events, we sort of live by 4 rules. One is that it's got to be beautifully designed. 2, it has to have a compelling story and narrative. 3, it has to be authentic. And 4th, that has to be unexpected, because we find that everybody's looking for a tidbit to share at the dinner table, and we want that tidbit to be somehow related to Warby Parker. So our first fashion presentation wasn't on the runways in Lincoln Center, wasn't in Milk Studios, but it was actually at the New York Public Library. And what we did is we had this sort of like flash mob guerrilla presentation that we actually called a hush mob because it was in a library. But we had 30 models. We did hair and makeup in the Bryant Park Hotel, walked them up, snuck them in to the great reading room, took over about 6 tables, invited 25 different fashion editors with a really cryptic letterpress invitation, brought them in at 3:30 on the dot. All the models put on their glasses and lifted up these books with bright blue book jackets that said the frame name by Warby Parker. And it was this really interesting, unexpected experience that all these editors ended up writing about. And it made sense to who we were because it was in the New York main branch, New York Public Library, that we discovered Warby Pepper and Zag Parker, our namesake.
It's interesting because you guys are, you're a new company. It's a tight group of people. Do you let outsiders in to advise you creatively around storytelling? Do you have people who have helped build your brand externally, or is it all internal?
Absolutely. One of the things that when we were building the company, people sometimes want to be so secretive because they're worried someone's going to steal their idea. And our thought is that ideas are not novel. In fact, if your idea is too new, chances are the market's not ready for it. So we would scream and shout like, hey, we're working on this, and it helped our friends and advisors sort of be better able to help us because they could be proactive about it. We ended up surveying our classmates at Wharton, repeatedly had focus groups, individual interviews, and they ended up being sort of our core customer base and helped us spread the word significantly. We've also worked, now that we're a bit larger, with some creative houses like Sub Rosa and Partners in Spade. In fact, going back to the events, one of the things that we wanted to do during Fashion Week, there's Fashion's Night Out, and that's a really crowded time to sort of make a splash because every brand, every store is doing something. They're spending tons of money on it, and we couldn't compete on spend, so what could we do that's really creative? And we have a pair of frames that were inspired by Buddy Holly's. And we found out that during that Fashion Week, it was going to be what would have been Buddy Holly's 75th birthday. So we had a birthday party for him. We partnered with a producer that had just come out with a tribute album. This tribute album had people like Kid Rock and Florence and the Machine cover Buddy Holly songs, and we got one of the artists to perform at Partners in Spade, had a big cake, had a champagne toast, blew out the candles and sung Happy Birthday, and it helped us sort of steal the show and get a bunch of press the next day in a very crowded time.
Okay. One question from the floor on the audience. Anyone got any questions for Neil? No, you've answered it. Oh.
The more people know that your brand is $95, more it brings down the status of the brand.
So we hope not. One of the things when we were testing pricing, one of the things that we found was that the higher that we charged, the increase in likelihood to purchase was up to $100, and then start to tail back down, because I think above $100 is a slightly different purchase process. But right, we look at fashion and we see over and over again that price is a substitute for aspiration, and we're trying to buck that trend by really explaining in detail why we charge $95, what our brand stands for. I think the internet allows us to share a lot more information, and what you find, I think, is that brands and businesses can't hide any longer, right? Because so much information is widely available. So this idea that aspiration is based on price, I think is going to be in big trouble over the next 5 years or so, as brands evolve to be a lot more than just a glossy print in Vogue. You really need to know the whole story, the supply chain, everything.
Good. Patrick Kiss.
Question. Do you find that people are going into traditional retail channels, taking pictures of glasses and sending them to you and saying, "Can you make these for me"?
Not a ton. Right now, we're just designing our own frames, and have really kept our collections pretty tight, because one of the things that we found is when we walked into an optical shop, the typical optical shop has between 700 and 1,000 different SKUs, and it's just the choice is overwhelming. So we want to bring that down, and we have about 50 shapes available now in 2 to 4 colors each. I think we'll continue to control that process, unlike like a ModCloth or a Threadless. I think the thing about Threadless is that it's really not a t-shirt company. It's a community of artists that just happen to design on t-shirts, where we really see ourselves as the designers. I mean, we might do one-off here and there to try and get our community involved, but I think our core customer aren't eyewear designers.
Okay. Neil, thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.